Welcome back everyone to the video, and today we are ranking every single team's 2024 NFL season, at least where they are right now. We're at this point now where a lot of these games are starting to matter a whole lot more for our teams that are approaching the playoffs and trying to make runs at Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously the other side of that coin is teams that these games don't mean near as much to them now because they're just trying to get a better draft pick, kind of reevaluate coaching, all that kind of stuff. So we did one of these at the beginning of the season. If you want to see, I guess, how that's aged, you can go check that out. I'll probably react to it either way whenever the season's over. But for this, so we have Super Bowl contenders, deep playoffs, barely make/miss playoffs, and mock draft being the tiers. So for Super Bowl contenders, I'm trying to keep that as like no more than 5 teams, and I'm trying to keep it to where it's somewhat balanced between a couple teams from the AFC, a couple from the NFC. Deep playoffs is pretty much referring to divisional round or AFC/NFC championship game. The reason it says deep playoffs is it's just supposed to mean, you've moved on from the wild card, whether it was a bye week, whether it was, you won in advance, something to show that you didn't just barely squeak in and get smacked by 30 points, basically. Barely make/miss playoffs are for the teams that are kind of right on that line of maybe needing help to get in. Maybe they barely got in themselves and then lost, kind of like the Steelers versus the Bills. I believe that was last year. Kind of like a scenario kind of like that. So there'll be a lot of teams in there because there are a lot of teams that are very close to either barely making or missing the playoffs. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad team. It just means that, they might not control their own destiny, even though it's a little too early to say, but you can kind of start to tell for some of these teams anyway. So then obviously the final tier mock draft, the season's over. You're kind of just waiting for coaching changes, player moves, anything like that, and then the draft. So jumping right into it. Actually, before we do, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel down below. It is free and takes just a second. I would really appreciate all the support there on the road to 1,000 subscribers. It's been a while since my last tier list. I'm excited to do this. I know you guys always really like these, so make sure to leave a like, comment down below what you guys agree or disagree with. For right now, though, jumping right into this, we have the Cardinals up first. So the Cardinals are going to go in the barely make/miss playoffs tier because it's kind of up in the air with this team right now. And basically every team in the NFC West, to be honest with you, they're all about a game apart, and they're all right there with each other, because they're a game apart. So it's kind of hard to say what will happen here. I honestly feel like even if the Cardinals get in, I can't see them really making a run in the playoffs. So I feel like this tier is very fitting for them because they could at this point barely make or miss the playoffs, but I don't think they'd do much if they got in anyways. So Cardinals are going there. Next is the Falcons, and the Falcons are a really tough team for me because I was really high on them actually going into this year. I hate the Falcons. I'm a big Panthers fan. I can't stand them, but I thought they were going to be really good this year, and I think they have in a lot of ways lived up to its expectations, but also in some other ways they've really dropped the ball at times, such as the Broncos game just a couple weeks ago. That was a bad loss for them. They needed to kind of get a little bit of a lead on the Buccaneers because the race for the division title is pretty much between the Buccaneers and the Falcons. So I'm going to put them in the barely make/miss playoffs tier. I honestly feel like the Falcons at their best, they could make a run at a divisional round appearance or even NFC championship appearance. I really did think that they were going to do that. Right now, though, very up in the air. I don't feel confident enough putting them there. So they're going to go in the barely make/miss playoffs tier. Next is the Ravens. I'm putting the Ravens in Super Bowl contender. They're not first in their division, but the Ravens have played some great games this year, and they made it last year, AFC Championship game. I think they are better offensively with Derrick Henry. Obviously, they've been very, very sharp offensively, but their passing defense is not very good. So I think their hope is to basically outscore some teams at this point, but they're still very good. I like this team a lot. Yeah, they did lose to the Steelers, but Steelers are a great team too. They have a little bit less power offensively. Actually, we'll get to the Steelers whenever they come up anyways, but still, as for the Ravens, I think they are strong enough to make a Super Bowl run because I assume they'll get into the playoffs at this point, and once they're in there, yeah, it depends on matchups, but I think they're good enough in the AFC to make a run at a Super Bowl. Next is the Bills. So the Bills are really tough for me. They're 9-2. They just beat the Chiefs. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and put them in Super Bowl contender. Here's what I'm going to say about this, though, is that the Bills' lack of experience offensively, I think, is going to really hurt them come playoff time, especially if you get to the divisional round and even further than that. You have Josh Allen, who has never really been able to get over the Chiefs, that roadblock basically for him in the playoffs. But now, apart from him, you have Keon Coleman in his first year, Curtis Samuel, who is a veteran, but he doesn't really have experience playing in the playoffs. Amari Cooper, that's a bit more of a veteran. He kind of knows what he's doing, but still, James Cook even, Ray Davis, backup running back, Dalton Kincaid. There's a lot of young guys in this offense that I think could really struggle in the playoffs playing some of those huge games like that. I think they are good enough, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they got upset in the playoffs. But still, I think they are good enough to make a run at a Super Bowl. So they're going there. Next to the Panthers, my personal favorite team. It is mock draft season for the Panthers, but I'm very hopeful though. I think Bryce Young post benching has been honestly great. I think people just like to hate on him now just because he's been so bad, but really, go back and watch these games after he's been benched and come back in. He's made some great throws, especially against the Chiefs the other day. Really, really good. I think he had like 156 yards against the blitz alone, which is huge for him. He struggled to blitz his entire career. So I'm very hopeful for him. I love some guys like Jalen Coker, who seems to be like a late round gem they found, and in him as an undrafted wide receiver. So yeah, not late round. I'm not sure what I'm talking about. Undrafted. I like Jonathan Brooks, even though he hasn't shown a whole lot. Jatavion Sanders, rookie tight end. Got off on a stretcher, actually. Hopefully he's okay. I think he has been discharged from the hospital and has avoided a major injury, so that's good. But still, Panthers has some nice pieces. I'm very hopeful for them. But still, they're not doing anything in the postseason this year. They're not going to win probably many more games this season. But they are making things competitive and at least looking like they are growing in some way. So I'm happy about that. They're going mock draft. Next is the Bears. So I just did a video talking about the Bears' issues and Caleb Williams. If you didn't see that, go check out that video. You guys seem to really like that. I did have a couple comments talking about how they thought maybe it was a bit more on Caleb than what I thought. I understand, but seriously, if you watch some of these games, especially the other day with the Bears, Caleb Williams is still making some great passes. Even though he's struggling, he is making some great throws. I still think it's there. He just needs some more time. He needs an O-line. With that said, the Bears are going to go in mock draft. People might not like that, though, because they are technically only like 4-7 at this point, or 4-8, whatever they are. So they could technically barely miss the playoffs, but you're in a division where the teams ahead of you are like 7-3 at worst, or 8-3 at worst. So they're not getting the playoffs. There's just no way. I think it's mock draft year or season for the Bears. You're still getting better slowly but surely, but I don't see them doing anything in the postseason or really coming that close to missing the playoffs at this point either. So they're going there. Next is the Bengals. And the Bengals are a really weird team because they have essentially the same record as the Bears or Panthers, but they play way better football. They have way better players. They just don't amount to any wins. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and put them barely miss the playoffs. Here is why I have them there and not in the mock draft tier. In the AFC North, obviously you have the Steelers, you have the Ravens, the Bengals, and then the Browns. The AFC is incredibly competitive right now where, a team that's like 7-5 could just not make the playoffs altogether. And the Bengals are obviously, 4-7, 4-8 now. Here's what I will say about that is the the Chargers as of right now are in the playoffs. I believe 7-4. I think the Broncos are also in right now, as of right now, at 7-5. The Bengals could still technically make a run at a wild card spot, even though it's not the most probable. Whereas in the NFC, you could technically say that's possible, but if you're looking at the odds and the teams above them, the teams above the Bears and the Panthers are way better than the teams above the Bengals, if that makes sense. The Bengals just barely lost to the Chargers, who are in the playoffs. So the Bengals, I think, are capable of making that run, if that makes sense, to be closer to those teams. That's why I have them barely missing the playoffs, not making, I have them barely missing the playoffs. And that's why I have them above teams like the Bears and the Panthers. So even though, yes, they probably won't make the playoffs, I think they'll make a better run at doing it than the Bears and Panthers. Hopefully that makes sense. Next is the Browns. Browns are just mock draft season. It was bad from the moment Watson was in there. Hasn't been much better since then. Very disappointing year. I think at this point you have to cut your ties with Deshaun Watson. Take your losses at this point. You're not getting that money back, those picks back. But you cannot throw him back out there next season. You're holding this team back. You need a long-term answer at quarterback. Winston's fun to watch, but he's not a long-term answer, so Browns have a lot to figure out. They are definitely in mock draft season. Next is the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are also going to go here. They did just get a big win over the Commanders yesterday, thanks to that missed extra point. That was a crazy game. Returned onside kick for a touchdown. That was absolutely nuts. Cowboys are going to go here, though, and it's honestly because you have Cooper Rush at quarterback, and no matter how many games you're winning right now, you're not making a run at the playoffs. You're just not. You're already below the Eagles and the Commanders in your division. And then you have a division like the NFC West, where like every single team is 6-5 or 5-6, one or the other. you're still like 2 games back from that. So you're still a bit far away from a wild card spot, and that is also assuming you end up winning more games with Cooper Rush at quarterback. I don't think you do. So Cowboys are going there, but they've had a lot of injuries this year. Very disappointing season for the Cowboys, but just sucks. Broncos are going to go in the barely make/miss playoffs tier. And I honestly don't know which I would say they're going to do, because I mean, at one point I was like, man, Broncos are pretty bad. Now they're looking pretty good. I think they'll be a team that will need some help. I don't think they'll end up controlling their own destiny as far as the playoffs go. I think they'll need some help, but still, I think this tier is very fitting for them. Bo Nix has impressed me a lot this year, and I think a lot of other people. I have a video actually on him coming out in a couple days, so be on the lookout for that. Next is the Lions. Lions are absolutely going in Super Bowl contenders. They are currently my favorite to win the Super Bowl. I think a lot of other people's favorite as well to win the Super Bowl. Super exciting team. They were so close to making it last year. I think they redeemed themselves this year. Amazing offense, amazing defense. You know, what more can you say? And they're doing all that on defense without Hutchinson too. That's what's so crazy. But yeah, Lions, they deserve all the respect in the world. Super Bowl contenders, especially for them. Next is the Packers, a division rival of the Lions, and they're going to go in deep playoffs. I think the Packers are a weird team to pin down. They'll have some really good games and some really bad games, but I trust them to start getting hot at the right time. That's what they did last year. I think they'll do it again this year. I love the Josh Jacobs addition. I really was really high on that in the offseason, but I thought the Xavier McKinney addition was even better, and I still stand on that. I think they needed safety help a lot last season. It was a huge weakness for them. They addressed it very well, in my opinion. You have him there. I like the Packers a lot. I think they are capable of making a divisional round or better appearance, so they're going there. Along with the Texans. Look, the Texans have struggled. I'm not going to lie. They've struggled more than I thought they would. Specifically, C.J. Stroud has struggled a lot more than I thought he would. A little bit of a regression in year 2. Not going to freak out about it. He had his wide receiver 1 down for a time. He lost Stephon Diggs for the year. O-line hasn't been the best. With all that said, I think he's been doing a little too much at times, trying to make too much happen, and it's what's kind of caused his turnovers to go up this year. He just needs to be more patient, I think. But again, he's a young player. I think anyone that was putting him in like top 3 conversations last year, you kind of did to yourself. I'm not going to lie, though. I thought Stroud was going to solidify himself as close to a top 5 pick this year, so I was wrong as well. I was very high on him, like a lot of other people. I was wrong as well, but still, he's a young guy. He still has a lot more of a career ahead of him. There's a lot more time left. I'm not going to get discouraged. As far as this year goes for deep playoffs, I think it's still possible because I think the Texans are also capable, like the Packers, of getting hot at the right time. Again, this will widely depend on matchups come playoff time because it's always the difference maker. But I still think the Texans are capable, so they're going to go right there. Next is the Colts. They're so, I mean, you could put them in mock draft. I'm going to put them in barely make/miss playoffs. I think they will technically barely miss the playoffs. They're not a great team, but I mean, I do think as far as their division goes, they will be in the wild card talks, I think, up until the final couple weeks. But again, I don't think they get in. They have a lot to figure out. Richardson needs more time, but that was, I mean, supposed to be what everybody knew, except for the Colts, I guess, because they decided to bench him for, I have no idea why. He needs more time to develop. Very raw prospect in general. As far as the Colts, though, as a team, they're not all there yet. They still have a lot of young pieces that just haven't stepped up quite as much as we thought. Like in year 1, A.D. Mitchell talked about being like the steal of the draft. Hasn't really done a whole lot. Josh Downs, though, is awesome. I really like Josh Downs. He's very underrated. Had a good year last year, too, his rookie year. But yeah, so Colts, they're going to go there. Next is the Jaguars, mock draft. I don't know what to make of the Jaguars. I mean, first off, I'm surprised Doug Peterson is still employed as the head coach, first off. Second, Trevor Lawrence banged up. A lot of people think he's incredibly overrated. Some will die on the hill that he's just in a bad situation. It's kind of hard to tell, in my opinion, because I defended Trevor Lawrence a lot, but he does have bad games. But then when he misses time for injuries like this, you can't really give him a fair shot, a fair evaluation, because he's not playing. So one way or another, though, the Jaguars are in a bad spot. They're in a very bad spot. A lot to figure out. Very disappointing year from them. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of hopeful for them, but they're in the mock draft tier. Next is the Chiefs. I don't think we have to talk too much about the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, that's just the way the team is. Super Bowl contenders. They're always going to be up there for as long as he's in the league. Next is the Chargers. Chargers are going to go deep playoffs, and it's so weird for me to put them there because For majority of this season, I was like, nope, they're pretenders. They're not as good as the record says, but they are really, really good. And I think they've actually gotten a lot better since like week 5, week 6. I mean, if you even look, even just statistically, look at Justin Herbert and like watch his yards just jump after like the midway point in the season. Or not even midway point. I think probably a couple weeks before the midway point in the season. I mean, he had like probably about 180 yards a game, and then all of a sudden he just flew up to like 255 a game. He's been playing great football. I think the Chargers are starting to kind of get figured out in a year where they weren't really expected to do much in, Harbaugh's first year there. So really exciting for them. They have a big game at the time of filming this, at least, tonight against the Ravens. But yeah, Chargers, I like him a lot. I love Lab McConkey. I like that defense as well. I think it's very underrated. So yeah, they're going deep playoffs. I think if the matchup's right, anything's possible for the Chargers this year. I think they'll need to watch out for the Chargers. Next is the Rams. They're going and barely make/miss playoffs. Again, another one of those NFC West teams. Right now they could be in last. I don't think they are, but they could be in last, and then maybe 3 weeks from now they're in first. That division is incredibly competitive, and it probably will be down to the very last week. I do think the Rams will miss the playoffs, though. If I had to guess, I don't think they'll get in. But again, like I said, anything's possible. I think this tier is made for them. They're going there. Next is the Raiders. They're going mock draft. Raiders are really, really bad. They need a long-term answer at quarterback. They need more weapons on offense. They need depth on defense. I mean, you have a lot of issues for Las Vegas, so they're definitely going in the mock draft tier. Next is the Dolphins. The Dolphins, I'm going to put in barely make/miss. They are technically, we're watching in real time right now as they are salvaging a season that looked like it was basically over. But they are getting some wins to stack up now. I still don't think they're very good. I don't think they can really make anything of this season. They're going to basically play themselves out of a top pick and not make the playoffs, if I had to guess. So they're going to go right there. Next is the Vikings. Vikings are going to go deep playoffs. I'm not going to say Super Bowl contender, but the Vikings are a very tough team. And I want to tell you guys why, at least in my opinion, why I think they're a very tough team. First off, that defense, Brian Flores just does wonders. Amazing defense, great D-line, very solid secondary. Offensively, though, this past week against the Bears, if you look at Justin Jefferson's stats, you go, wow, Jefferson wasn't even a factor. That Bears defense is great. The Bears defense is great, and they basically said, okay, we're going to game plan for Justin Jefferson. We're going to make somebody else beat us, and that's exactly what the Vikings are able to do. On an offense where you have Aaron Jones, you have Sam Darnold's rushing ability, you have Jordan Addison, you have TJ Hawkinson, you have Brandon Powell, you have a lot of very good players. And so when you make somebody else beat you, the Vikings are able to do that. And honestly, I don't think they mind doing that. You have Aaron Jones over like 100 yards in the game. Jordan Addison had like 130, 140 yards. Hawkins had over 100 yards. So it's just their ability to pivot from what they might want to do to their other guys that are capable of stepping up. It's a dangerous team. It's a tough team to stop, especially a team like that in the playoffs. I like the Vikings. I think they are capable of making a very deep playoff push. But they are a team that, in my opinion, definitely relies very heavily on the matchups and what seed they get come playoff time. But still, they're going deep playoffs. Next is the Patriots. They're going mock draft season, but this season I think was honestly a success for the Patriots. You got to see Drake May. He honestly probably should have started since week 1, but since he's been in, it is very clear he's the guy. I think that's a huge weight off your shoulders if you're the Patriots. You have your franchise quarterback. You just need the rest of the team now. You need an O-line. You need more weapons for Drake May. But I think, this year, you're kind of given a pass for being terrible. Not much was expected. I think, honestly, as far as QB play goes from the rookie, he's exceeded expectations with a very poor surrounding cast. So, mock draft season, but hey, Patriots, things could have been worse. He could have been terrible when he was in. You could have felt completely lost. But right now, if I was a Patriots fan, I'd feel pretty confident in Drake May moving forward. Patriots are going there. Next is the Saints. They're also going mock draft. I don't know what happened. Those first 2 weeks, they were like absolutely unstoppable, and then all of a sudden they just fell back off. And, even if they make a push to the playoffs right now, I don't think they're going to get in. I think more than anything, it is mock draft season for the Saints that still have a lot to figure out roster-wise on a very old roster. So we'll see what they do there. Next is the Giants. Yeah, definitely mock draft. You got to get a quarterback. You got to get a quarterback for Malik Neighbors, and just for the sake of this team. I mean, you cannot have DeVito out there next year. You can't have Drew Lock out there next year. Don't sign a veteran. Draft a quarterback, Giants, please. You have to. I'm not sure if they don't. my mind would be blown if they didn't. Next is the Jets. The Jets are also going a mock draft year. I mean, there's a few teams you could probably say could be up there for biggest disappointment of the season, but I would give it to the Jets. I think you just have to give it to the Jets. You could say the Bengals, but I mean, the Bengals have also played exciting football. The Jets haven't even played exciting football. You turn on a Jets game and it's just boring, inconsistent, low-scoring football from a team that was supposed to be Super Bowl contender with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, and you even brought in Devontae Adams midseason. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Mock draft year, Jets just are still in a very bad spot, and I feel for Jets fans. That sucks. They're going there. Eagles, I'm going to put in Super Bowl contender, and I'm going to be honest. I'm not very confident in this. If anything, I put deep playoffs, but like, I want to balance it. Like, I want to have more than just one NFC team in the Super Bowl contender tier, but I'm not near as confident in any other NFC team as I am like with the Lions. The Lions I am the most confident in. I think they can definitely get there. Everybody else, it's like maybe the Vikings, maybe the Packers, like I guess the Eagles. So the Eagles, if I had to choose between the Vikings, Packers, and Eagles, I would put the Eagles above them. That's why they're there, but full transparency, I'm just trying to do that to balance out the two conferences. Eagles are a great team, though. With that said, I just don't think they are strong enough to make a Super Bowl push. But again, Saquon Barkley, 300 total yards from scrimmage with, what, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns? Absolutely unreal. I just unreal. So, Eagles, really fun to watch. Are they a Super Bowl contender? Probably not, in my opinion. I'm going to put them there anyway if I absolutely have to. I'd put them above the Vikings and the Packers. I think they're definitely a deep playoff team, though. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and put them there by Super Bowl contender. Next is the Steelers. So this is one people might not like very much. Steelers are going to go deep playoffs. Despite their record, I just don't see them really making a Super Bowl push. And yes, I have them below the Ravens, who the Steelers have beat, and they have a better record than. But I just don't trust Russell Wilson. I just don't trust him at this point in the season to get into the playoffs and keep up what he's doing right now. And that's really what it comes down to for me. People like to point to Lamar Jackson and say, oh, well, Lamar has a poor playoff record. Yeah, but Lamar just made it there last year. The last time Russell Wilson was playing in meaningful playoff football, that was a long time ago. I'm not saying he can't do it again this year, but the Steelers' offense already lacks a little bit of explosiveness. And I mean, if you look up there, you look at the Ravens, you look at the Bills, you look at the Chiefs, those are proven teams that have proven to win big football games, high-scoring football games, low-scoring football games. I don't think the Steelers could really outscore anybody. I think they have to slow teams down. And if their defense fails to do that, I think they will struggle to win games, especially in the playoffs. So they're going to go deep playoffs. I think they're a great team. I would be surprised if they didn't make it to the divisional round, but I don't see them going any further than that. So that's why they're going there. Seahawks and 49ers are both next, and they're both going in deep playoffs. Or sorry, they're both going and barely make/miss the playoffs because the entire NFC West is going there because they're all a game apart from each other, and there's no telling who's going to win that division. I don't think any of them are strong enough to make a Super Bowl push, including the 49ers. I don't think any of them are strong enough to make a deep playoff push, but I think they're all strong enough to get in the playoffs and then lose and probably play some exciting football along the way, too. I like the Cardinals a lot. They're really fun to watch, and so are the Rams. But, yeah, they're both going there. Next is the Buccaneers. I like the Buccaneers. This one's a really hard one for me. I would love to put them in deep playoffs, but I just can't. I'm going to put them barely make/miss playoffs. The Chris Godwin injury really hurt them. It really, really hurt them, and it sucks. I'm not going to say they can't do anything this year, but I would be surprised if they made it as far in the playoffs this year as they did last year, I got to say. And I love Baker. I really do. But I don't see it this year. They're going to barely make playoffs. If I had to guess, I think they make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they missed it as well. Either way, they're going in that tier. Next is Washington. Now, this one's really tough for me. If you would have asked me this 3-4 weeks ago, I probably would have had them deep playoffs. Right now, maybe they just barely make the playoffs then lose. I don't know. I'm not totally sure where to go with this one. If I'm looking at the teams at deep playoffs and I'm looking at Washington, I do think they're on a similar level. But at the same time, I could see them also being on a similar level to a team like the Seahawks who get in and then probably lose. Or a team like the Cardinals who could probably get in and then lose. I am going to put them here. I'm going to put them in barely make the playoffs. I think they will get in, but I don't know if they'll really win anything in the playoffs. They've gotten to be a little bit inconsistent. And if you do get a worse seed than what was projected a couple weeks ago, you're going to be playing, I mean, one of the better teams in the NFC. And the thing is, the NFC skill gap between the very best and like the not very good is very large. It's much larger than the skill gap from the very best to not very good in the AFC. So if Washington gets in as like one of the last seeds and they're playing, the Lions, or they're playing the Eagles, a division rival, I think that'll be close. But if they're playing like the Lions, or they're even playing like the Vikings, I don't know if they're going to win that game at all, to be honest. So they're going to go there. People might not like that take. And I love Washington. I love Jaden Daniels. I think he's awesome. I really do. But just, I don't know. I'm not totally confident there. That is going to do it, though, for my rankings, I guess, as of right now. We'll see how this ages. I am fairly confident in a lot of these. Let me know down below any teams you agree or disagree with. Now, if it's a team like, mock drafts actually and barely make / miss playoffs, like, yeah, I can see that. But, like, if you guys have a team I have in, like, barely make / miss playoffs that you guys think should be in Super Bowl contenders, definitely let me know. I'd love to hear all the big differerences like that. Thank you guys for watching. I do really appreciate it. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel down below. It is free and takes just a second. I would really appreciate all the support there. Bo Nick's video coming soon this week. We have week picks coming soon this week, which would be a special one, I guess, with Thanksgiving games, all that kind of stuff. So be on the lookout for those. I'm going to do another tier list here very soon, ranking all offenses and defenses. So also watch out for that. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. Peace out.